good evening, good afternoon, or good morning to everybody, and thank you for joining us for the Local Public Service Alliance working group meeting today. I'm really happy to see many friends and also new people. You probably know that the Local Public Service Alliance is relatively, it's like a 3-4-year-old global network of practitioners aiming to bring together government officials, policy practitioners, scholars, civil society organizations, all of them interested and experts in decentralization, multi-level governance, intergovernmental relations, local governance, local development. And our group specifically works on Eastern Europe and Central Asia. It's mostly Eastern Europe. Today we will we have a session on regional development and the regional development link and approaches in the European accession process. The European Union's development policy plays a crucial role in shaping economic growth, convergence, social cohesion, and territorial balance across its member states and accession countries. Regional development strategies, as you know, evolve in response to shifting priorities, aiming to reduce disparities, foster innovation, enhance competitiveness. These policies significantly impact both EU members and candidate countries, and they influence development policies, the governance models, the institutional structures, and the funding mechanisms. Local and regional governments are key players in this process, receiving an important role in the practical implementation of the EU acquis and public investments, actively engaging in regional development planning and finding solutions for accessing EU funding. This workshop will explore, compare the experience of new members, new EU members and candidate countries, and it will illustrate diverse approaches to leverage EU support, to manage structural adjustments, and to address challenges in governance, capacity building, long-term sustainability. We have tonight 3 presenters and 1 discussant. We have Thomas Prorok, who is Managing Director at KDZ Center for Public Administration Research. He will speak about local governments in the EU budgets, about the future of the European Union budget, and also will reflect on the impact on like fiscal decentralization arrangement impact in various countries on how they access and use regional development funds. We will have then Zoltan Palmer, a research fellow at the Center for Economic and Regional Studies, Institute of Regional Studies, and he will present us comparative analysis of territorial governance patterns in 3 countries, Croatia, Hungary, and Slovenia. And the final presentation will be by Agron Hajimali, Executive Director of the Institute for Albanian Municipalities. And we will see the country example of Albania, the territorial administrative reform, and the impact of the organizational and management capacity in Albania. And we have a special guest tonight, Biljana Cvetanovska-Gugoska. She's a program specialist on local governance and integrated local and urban development at the Regional Bureau for Europe and CIS of UNDP. From Istanbul, and Biljana will discuss, comment, and with her and with you, we will ask questions, and hopefully we'll have an interesting discussion afterwards. And talking about this, we have a chat for the session, and I encourage you to put your comments and questions in the chat, and then we'll try to address them with the speakers. So with this short introduction, I give the floor to Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, Adrian. Welcome. Also from my side, I'm really happy to be here to discuss with you the already mentioned points. I'm located in Vienna, so I'm part of the region we are talking about. Nevertheless, I want to focus very specific on the on issues of EU budget. When I was invited, I was thinking, okay, what could I bring concerning the territorial governance? And then it happened that the European Commission brought out the paper of proposals for the new multi-annual financial framework. So there are now very fresh proposals on the table for how the EU wants to budget itself after the year 2028. And in my view, there are really, not just in my view, there are really changes to be expected in general for everyone, for every member, but also non-member of the EU. But in my view, also specific for the regions and for the local level, because I guess the money will be more strict distributed. I guess that the European Commission will have a more say on how the money will be distributed. There will be changes, flexibility, higher flexibility. And I mean, this has consequences for the region. So some of us can still hope, okay, that maybe poorer regions or regions not so well developed concerning the GDP will get more money. But I'm really skeptic and really concerned. And at the same time, so we see here coming from the European Union a more strict regulations, but at the same time, this is also what we are seeing in the countries, in many countries, that regions and local level are getting more and more under, let's say, control of the central governments. We're talking about transfers and grants, taking a huge part of the local and regional budgets, and minimizing, let's say, regional self-government and local self-government. So more strict budgets, and I want to go into that and give my personal and some, how to say, professional experiences on that. I share my presentation by myself, so that I hope you can. Okay. So in general, what is important? I always try to focus on, let's say, the consequences of local level. But what happened in the last years? We always had in the European Union this so-called multi-annual financial frameworks, which means a proposal for a 7-year budget. For the whole European Union, we are talking about 1,000. In this case, in this current one, 1,200 billion euros. And I mean, in former times, it was always like that 1/3 goes to the regions and to the local governments. To the regions, in fact, cohesion policy 1/3. Okay. What happened now with the COVID time, with the financial crisis, was that an additional budget, so as nothing would have happened, of 800 billion euros has been implemented, has been founded at the so-called Recovery and Resilience Facility. It was a really important step, because first time, and it was a long discussion, first time this budget comes from let's say, own grants or own loans. So the European Union, as a supranational institution, the European Union itself was allowed to take loans directly to finance much of this next generation EU or recovery and resilience facility. So there was just some years ago a huge change in the full system of the European Union financing. Besides the always existing multi-annual financial framework, 7 years, there was, due to the financial crisis and the economic crisis, and now also to the war in Ukraine, an additional budget, the so-called recovery and resilience facility, which is loans, yeah, taken by the European Union itself. And when we talk about the future, then the question is how to pay back the loans, which is now then in the next financial period starting. So this is the big picture. Here are some more details. I will share the presentation afterwards. I think this is not so much of interest. As I mentioned already, I mean, for those working on EU issues, it was always like that 1/3 of the budget is cohesion policy and territorial regional funds, however it was called in the last time. And I mean, I'm not sure if this will be also the future when we look in the long term terms. Those working with European Union also since longer times know that in former times most of the budget went to the common agriculture politics and policy in the areas, but we also see even in the last 30 years that this was going slightly down. When you look at the time schedule, we see this development that the new priorities are slightly increasing since let's say the first economic crisis in this century, 2008. We see that this red line goes up, and we have now a situation of, let's say, 1/3 agriculture, 1/3 cohesion policy, and 1/3 additional new tasks. For example, Horizon. That's the common coordinated policy for universities and research, but of course also issues of the accession. Yeah. So you see already a development of these, let's say, additional new tasks are getting more and more important in the European Union. Why I'm telling that? Because in the last 15 years, connected with the crisis, with the economic crisis 2008, and with the problems which we had in the euro area, started with Greece, the European semester has been step by step set up in the European Union. So besides the multi-annual 7 years framework, there is now the so-called European semester, which means with each country of the European Union, a kind of plan is organized of how these countries have to further develop, where the problems in the countries are, to get the standards, to get the cohesion within the countries, and we call, let's say, this cycle European semester. The idea is to have an economic governance framework. We know the Maastricht criteria, for example, but it goes really further. Starting with 2011, especially after the learnings from the crisis in Greece. And this is the situation we have now. We have the multi-annual finances. We have, since 2000, this recovery and resilience facility, 800 billion euros. And we have the European semester for having agreements each year between the Commission and the member states on the status quo of the countries, how to further develop the countries, and also, that is the new thing, of the so-called country-specific recommendations. Because the Commission, I mean, in fact, in agreements, but nevertheless, the Commission has for each country recommendations how to further develop the country, what is not going good, what should be changed. For example, health system or social services. For Austria and also for many countries, country-specific recommendations exist concerning the tax system, for example, concerning also the fiscal equalization system. So in Austria, Commission says your fiscal equalization system can national level, we have also state level, we are a federal country, state level, let's say regional level and local level, is not properly developed and should be further developed. So the Commission has country-specific recommendations. This is part of this, what has been involved in the last 10, 15 years, European semester cycle, multi-annual framework. And by the way, we give you also country-specific recommendations. And with this new recovery and resilience facility, these country-specific recommendations got more and more important because they got linked to the payment of the recovery and resilience facility. So for each country, there is, depending on the GDP and on the economic strength, there is a clear amount of money which goes to the countries, and this, how to say, it is monitored how the countries are implementing these country-specific recommendations, and based on that, programs are developed how to spend these 800 billion euros. So there is a big change in the last years on how the EU is spending the budgets, and we see already now that this huge amount of additional EU budget is in very few countries. Let's say the regional and local level have a say on that. So we see a tendency that the Commission gets stronger on deciding how to use the money in the countries, with these country-specific recommendations via the European semester and the European semester cycle, and this is an ongoing, trend and a tendency. For example, in Austria, you see in one of these specific recommendations. So this is really, the Commission says, okay, this is what you should do. Of course, there is a dialogue between the countries and the Commission. There's always a dialogue, but nevertheless, this is on paper. And for example, in Austria, it says, simplify and rationalize the fiscal relations and responsibilities across the layers of government and align financing and spending responsibilities. Those working on local and regional budgets know, I mean, of course, this is an open saying, but nevertheless, it says there needs to be a reform on that. And you see, we have limited progress. This is already from 2019, but it's still in our country-specific recommendations also for this year, or for last year. For this year, we don't have it now, but it's always limited progress. So Commission is giving us feedback, and step by step, it's also going into the direction of, okay, money flows to the country if these country-specific recommendations are implemented. There are also national plans for that. In the national plans, the countries say also how they want to spend it, but nevertheless, the Commission links it to this country-specific recommendations. For those who are interested, you find there is a website where you find all these projects, how the money flows into specific projects. You see it also linked to the how to see, to the geography. I mean, they are not. There are some, you see here, the orange ones, they are social and territorial cohesion, so they are marked as supporting the territorial how to say development. In Austria, this is not the case. In Austria, the money goes mainly to issues of digitalization and health support. For example, the local governments are also profiting through a community nurse program, which is paid by the European Union. Yeah. So here you see the could check more the money flow. That's the situation now. And based on this situation, so having a more strict and more say of the Commission on the current spending, and this goes step by this has come step by step. What is the situation now? The situation now is that the current multi-annual financial framework ends in 2027, so there is still much time, and now it's time to plan for the future for 28 plus. And a short paper has been presented, the road to the next multi-annual framework. So we are talking about the core budget. We are not talking about this resilience and recovery fund, which has been new. But when you look at this paper, you see already, okay, the first point is, okay, we have to pay back the loans, which we got for the resilience and recovery fund, meaning that there will be, I guess, less money available if we go on like that, because when the EU has to pay back the loans, I mean, it will be more strict budget. But then there are some principles which are called a more focused budget, a simpler budget, an EU budget with greater impact, in a more flexible budget, a budget that delivers on EU priorities. So these are the bigger pictures. They sound great. That's always, when you read these papers, it's always great. But of course, they show already, okay, more focused means together with EU priorities means it can be that it goes more into a specific direction, for example, defense. Yeah, to be honest, I mean, you find it also in the paper when I took some of the priorities they are managing. So we want to focus the money in future on competitiveness. This is the Draghi report, which has been presented some months ago. Less green, but more competition. Yeah. The priorities will be European security and defense policy, migration, reformed cohesion, they call it reformed cohesion and structural policy, in a way that the financing should be simpler and more efficiently spent to what is most needed. That sounds also very great, but in the fact, it means there will be less money for social and cohesion and regional cohesion. I mean, that's what you can read between the lines. The next one is the sustainability and climate protection. But also here, sustainability and climate was, how to say, very important. The green agenda is an important one in now, but you can also read it here. It will be adapted to the current challenges. The current challenges are the competitiveness from the Draghi report. And you can read it that when you read between the line, it will play a less important role. Good for the region, what we are talking about, but I'm not sure how good it really will be, is a new financial strategy for EU enlargement. I mean, I still hope that this means at least more support for EU enlargement, but this is maybe also a very naive from my side approach. New rules. I have to take care of my time. New rules, and this also shows the more stricter approach. The first one is the performance-oriented financing. This means, how to say, Yeah, money for projects in the end. Huh? When you remember what I showed with these country-specific recommendations, where it's clear what should be achieved in the country, and when you see that in the last years the budget was more transferred to these country-specific recommendations or to projects linked to the country-specific recommendations, this is what we see here in the performance-oriented financing. It will go more into this direction. So not focusing so much on territorial cohesion and saying, okay, there is a 1/3 of the budget going into that, and we agree with the member states what they will do in their country. No, it will be performance-oriented, and it will be, you have to implement indicators, you have to implement projects getting objectives and indicators. More dynamic adjustments means easier reallocation, which is needed. You know, we now see the global changes, and the Commission wants not to be binded for 7 years, not to be binded. We get more 1/3 to the cohesion policy. They want to be more flexible with easier reallocations. You see this also in the next ones, higher flexibility of the funds, not again binding 90% of the funds to strictly fixed allocations. Simplification, that sounds good. Hopefully it will be like that. And also what in my view looks better is focusing more than now on the compliance of the principles of the rule of law. In fact, it means countries which are not fully following rule of law, reducing the funds faster than it has been before. So I don't want to be here too negative, but for in my view, this it goes into a direction that for the regional and local level, and also for the cohesion issues, it will be a challenge to have, let's say, at least the same fundings and the same finances in the new multi-annual framework than we had before. And let me, with 2 slides, skip to the region of Western Balkan and Southeast Europe. I'm not sure if you're aware, we did together with NALAS, mainly NALAS has done the fiscal decentralization report, where we compare on the local level the budgets, the local budgets, how is it differently organized in the countries, spendings, expenditures, and just 2 things, 2 issues which are our important findings. I mentioned it already in the beginning, and it's, in my view, linked a little bit to what we see also on the European level. So we see on the local level, in the last years, you know, we compared 2006 to 21. So this 15 years difference, what we see is a decrease of own revenues. When you have a local budget, local government budget, best case, there would be own taxes, there would be own fees on a higher level, so fixed budget which you can plan. But what we see, unfortunately, is in general, not in all countries, the same level, a decrease of their own revenues. Those working on the local level in the Western Balkans and Southeast Europe know it. That's the trends, that's the tendency, meaning an increase of dependency on the national level. Some are happy with that, but in general, we have the problem that municipalities cannot plan properly anymore their budget, because these revenues which are coming from grants, sectoral grants or transfers, they can change every year. So that is the unfortunate thing on that. So the share of sectoral and earmarked grants has been doubled, and that is the problem. At the same time, the taxes, their own taxes have been, let's say, reduced. It's different in the countries, but we see a limited local government tax power. Also mainly compared with the good EU countries. Austria is not even, would not say Austria is here a role model. It's not a role model on that. We are good on fees. That is something what we can contribute as a good practice in the Austrian system. But when we compare it more to the Nordic countries, or to countries like the Netherlands, for example, we see a very limited local government tax power in the region. I guess you know it, but just for me, the things are here coming together. In future, EU will have a more strict and more central approach on budget and budget reallocation, similar to what we see here in our fiscal decentralization report already in the region on the national level. I would like to stop here, Adrian, because otherwise I'm misusing my time and the others cannot talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Actually, you're not misusing the time. This was very interesting. And let me just give the floor to Biljana for a few minutes to see what attracted her attention, what she found interesting, or if she has any questions.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Adrian, and hi, everyone. So happy to be part of this discussion today. I mean, Thomas, this was a very interesting presentation and very much timely, because I think that we are kind of in a need of more discussions about how the insecurities of all the global changes and the insecurity of foreign policy actually shapes local governments. And that is what you have actually touched upon in this discussion. Of course, your presentation focused mainly on the EU, but as you've highlighted yourself, this has also heavy impact on how policies, local policies and regional development policies are being shaped in the Western Balkans and in the Eastern Partnership countries, which are on their EU accession way. So, as you've mentioned, EU accession, EU countries actually do receive country-specific recommendations in terms of how to promote or advance certain policies in order to receive funding. What I would like to ask you is this kind of a space where actually EU will be guiding certain priorities in terms of centralization or decentralization? You've mentioned that it goes in centralization, but perhaps the priorities identification of where the funding will go to, whether it will be related to green development, whether it would be related to social policies, it will still be maintained at the local level. So this is kind of a two-way street that we may look at. And in terms of the performance-oriented financing, I think that for the EU acceding countries, this is not news because the entire reform agenda is packed around performance payments. So it seems that EU wants to have EU member countries also monitored closely in terms of how they spend their funding. So that puts us in a kind of equal position, if I may say so, in terms of performing and then receiving additional funding. And lastly, not to forget what you've referred to in terms of the Southeastern Europe and the report that you have prepared together with NALAS, decrease of own revenues, even though we as local governance practitioners have been strongly supporting the trends towards increasing the fiscal autonomy of local governments, it is going in the totally opposite direction. And with this switches also into how EU decides to allocate the next budget in the next programming period for EU countries will further highlight these trends. So, I mean, it's not a question, but it's just an observation. Is there anything that we, like governance, local governance practitioners and regional development practitioners can do in that regard? How do you see it?
Yeah, so many remarks. Thank you very much for your really high valuable comments. Some aspects. I mean, if it goes to a centralization, yeah, from concerning the European Commission or European Union, I'm not so sure that it's not like that there is a policy or something like that to say we want more centralization. When you read all the documents, when you see the discussions, also the new issue of multi-level governance, which is now also part of the public administration reform agenda for the not for the EU countries, not now for the EU countries, but for the accession countries. You see that in fact, there is the idea to go in the opposite direction, multi-level governance, meaning also having in mind autonomy, subsidiarity, and fiscal decentralization. So I mean, it basically, and this is also what, let's say, the countries in the region are now also monitored from Sigma, also multi-level governance. That's a good thing on the one side. On the other side, so there is no strategy to say we want more decentralization, but I see the tendency, and I would not even say that it's on purpose, but it happens. It happens, and I think it's then the issue of local governments and regional governments and representatives to work against it. And with the new, let's say, multi-level governments approach, which we have in the principles of public administration from Sigma, it's a good thing. So not no strategy, but nevertheless there is the tendency, and with these country-specific recommendations, you see how it goes. You mentioned also what I like very much, what I also see, but that performance orientation is something which is already going on for accession countries or for yes, that's true, and honestly, I also think it is it's okay from the principle. From the principle, I like it. It could make the money flow much more transparent. It could make it more impactful. But it's then really the question of how to implement it. And here I'm honestly a little bit skeptic, especially concerning local and regional governments, because I guess you need a framework. You need a framework for each country. It will be more. It will be agreements between the national level, the governments, the national governments, and the European Commission, and it's then the question of within the country have the regions and the local governments are saying. I think similar to what you experience now in the region, and this is a challenge, and I'm not sure if the new multi-level government approach will be so strong and so clear. Also, for all those negotiating in these issues on the country-specific recommendation and performance orientation, that it will not lead to more centralization. Honestly, when I hear people in the Commission, I mean, it's also clear that the European Union is a member. Is a member union, and the members are the national governments. Yeah. So how to say that's also how the Commission sees it. So there is how to say a danger for it. Yeah, and the last thing I have forgotten now, I wanted to stress, I wrote it down, I wanted to stress the multi-level governance, that basically I think it's a good, that it can also be a positive, it can also have a positive impact. Yeah. Did I forget now something? Sorry, Biljana.
No, that's it. Thank you. And thank you again for the great presentation.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. Actually, what I notice is that these country-specific recommendations will have subnational implications, and going to your NALA's fiscal decentralization comparative analysis, I have some reservations about the decrease of own revenues as a proportion of the budgets, and I'm looking more skeptically at from the side of the lack of interest of fiscal effort of local authorities. So what I see in Romania, in Moldova, in North Macedonia, is that local governments shy away from actually increasing and collecting the local taxes. And I'm talking about property tax especially. And actually in Romania, for example, one of the conditions is that for paying funds from this fund is an increase in the property tax, and governments and local governments do not want to do that. And I think this diminishing of own revenues in the aggregate budget, I think it's also a reflection of what local governments are willing to do, not only the central government.
Here I just can say yes. I guess you are right. It's a multi-dimensional issue, and of course it's also different between the countries. But it's a crazy situation, huh? When we are talking about local autonomy and fiscal decentralization, and then we say, okay, the regions and the local governments don't want to collect the money, and they don't want to get, how to say, in touch with data. I also see that experience that sometimes, but nevertheless, I think, and I'm sure this is the way for a local autonomy, and we have to go into this direction. Otherwise, we could also say, okay, why not having just a centralized system, or how to say, an administrative decentralized system? Huh? So that would be in the end the consequences. But yes, you are right. This is a challenge. This is a challenge.
Thank you very much, Thomas. We'll move on to Zoltan and his comparison between Croatia, Hungary, and Slovenia.
Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone. I'm very happy about participating in this very interesting discussion. Thank you for the invitation, and I see that there are so many people in this online webinar. I tried to make it visible. I hope that you see this. Actually, I was not entirely aware about the targeted scope of the discussion. That's why I will try to put a bit more focus on the issues that have been discussed in this previous presentation, which was extremely interesting for me to hear. We are at our institute dealing with territorial governance issues with a focus on Hungary, of course, and on the neighboring countries. I particularly deal with Slovenia and Croatia. That's why this analysis is also focusing on these countries. And we have used cross-border cooperation data for comparing territorial governance patterns in the different countries. And this will be an example of a very simple methodology how to compare things which are in general qualitative, and we try to quantify it in a comparable way. I will shortly speak about the countries and then about cross-border cooperation, but I won't go into details because this is not now the focus. Research questions, the methodology, and I will highlight the most important findings of this research in the context of this discussion. I will start with Slovenia. Slovenia is the westernmost country of the former Yugoslavia, as you all know. And this is a small country which has a very strong local government system, and in generally they have kept the old Yugoslavian local governments. It means that they are relatively big. They are having a bit more than 200 local governments in the country for a bit less than 2 million people, so about 9,000 people are living in one local government. And they are very important players because the Slovenian territorial structure does not know an elected medium-tier system of governance. They have established in various legal regulations the option to establish a pokrajina.
Zoltan, sorry for intervening. The screen is on Hungary, so I'm not sure if you're moving the screen or it's blocked somehow. frozen.
You don't see any change?
I only see Hungary.
Okay, then I will switch it from this presentation mode. Maybe you see it in this editing mode.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Okay,
now
maybe
we see
this
it.
will be better,
Thank
right?
you.
If there's no
Yes,
option,
thank you.
other option. So in Slovenia, the local governments are very important players, as there's no region, no elected governmental body on NAS2 or NAS3 level. There's an option to establish them, but it actually didn't take place so far. Slovenia per se is a polycentric country. And in general, regional development policy was always focusing on coping with employment issues back to the 1970s and promoting this polycentral approach. They have set up on NAS3 level development councils, but this is also delegated by the local government. So, in fact, the local governments are the key players in regional development in Slovenia. Hungary is a completely different example because in Hungary we have a very strong, traditionally strong local development, local level system, but they are very small. We have in Hungary a bit less than 3,200 local governments. It means that each local government has, by average, about 3,000 inhabitants, which is one of the smallest in terms of size in the EU. We have this traditional county system. There was an attempt to set up this NAS2 regions in 1996 by the law, but this was abolished actually in 2011 when the public administration reform took place. Actually, these NAS2 councils were also delegated by governmental bodies and county governments, and it wasn't a very wasn't a typically elected level of governance, but it was much more a centrally controlled public administration system. Actually, this currently available public administration system and local government system is even more centralized than it was before. So even if the counties exist on paper, they don't have a lot of competences, only coordinational, and every public administration role which appears on county level is state controlled by the governmental offices in the counties. So this is also reflected in the budget. So the local governments are having less and less funding, a very limited own revenue. Most of the traditionally local taxes have been redirected to the central budget. I mean about property taxes like vehicle taxes. For example, a larger and larger share of these taxes should be forwarded to the national budget. And it means that less projects are financed from local budget and more reliance is experienced on different fundings, EU funding, and so on. You also probably heard about this problem of EU co-financing of Hungary because part of the financing is frozen and most of the funds are not accessible to local governments. So this is a very big problem which is accelerating currently. Croatia is a very interesting example. This was a country which was affected by war in the beginning of the 1990s. They have set up this NAS3 system of counties with a relatively small, yet a lot larger than in Hungary, municipalities. So in Croatia, average size of municipality is 6,700 people. So it's more than double of the Hungarian size, but still relatively small in European terms. And they are having this county system, which has been strengthened since the 1990s, step by step. I won't go into these details, but most of the state administration roles have been delegated to these counties after the year 2000 until our days. Parallel, this regional development system, which was established in many Eastern European countries as a parallel system to the public administration in Croatia, it was put on the county level, so the counties have established their institutions. But still, regional development is very centralized in Croatia with a relatively strong county assistance. And they have tried to introduce this integrated territorial investment scheme, giving the larger towns a bit bigger role than the others. This was an attempt. So you can see some maps how this structure looks like. Actually, the sizes of these counties on national level are relatively similar in terms of surface, also in population in the three counties. I won't go into details about this cross-border cooperation, but this is, in general, border studies have been always a multidisciplinary research issue, as you also know. Maybe European integration played a very important role in facilitating cross-border cooperation, and this was always put a bit into geopolitical context before the EU accession, but after the EU accession, it has become a much more technocratic matter, which enabled a lot of comparative analysis, a mapping of institutional actors, the measurement of intensity of cooperation, a lot of other things. And it has had a very important contribution to Europeanization in the newly accessing countries in the 2000s. And indirect funding was something which was all the time increasing until 2020. In the 2021-27 period, the funding is a bit smaller than it was before. We are very much curious about what the new financial perspective will bring in terms of cross-border cooperation, which is relatively small money, but still it plays a very important role in transferring policy Europeanization and cooperation. So in our research, we wanted to highlight the institutional patterns, what types of institutions can be considered as leading actors in the three countries in cooperation, because our idea was that through the joint projects, when in a project that the partners should implement the same thing, or more or less the same thing on the 2 or 3 sides of the border, they should put together institutions which are compatible with each other. So what are these differences? What types of institutions are cooperating? How the state and the local level particularly is present in this cooperation patterns? How the different levels of the settlement hierarchy, and on these levels of the settlement hierarchy, which are the most typical institutions. We use the data of 3 programs, the Hungary-Croatia, Hungary-Slovenia, and the Slovenia-Hungary program for the 2014-20 period. This means several hundred projects, and each beneficiary of these projects was analyzed and put into different categories. Institutional categories, as you see on the bottom of the slide, public bodies on national, regional, local level, and other types of organizations. And their place of operation was also put into 5 categories according to the settlement hierarchy. Not 2 centers, like big cities like Maribor, Pécs, and Osijek. Not 3 centers, the centers of those regions I showed on the map. Other towns above 5,000 people, larger municipalities above 2,000 people, and municipalities up to 2,000 people. We basically analyze the numbers of cooperation. So 1 participant organization in 1 project means 1. But we also analyze the funding in euros. This was the contract to the ERDF funding. And on this map, you can see the area that we analyzed, and you can see the largest cities in category 5, 4, and 3. You see a lot of dots on these maps, and this covers a relatively large area, these programs. This is not interesting. I think what were the topics, the thematic areas that this money was spent for? Climate change, risk prevention, protection of the environment, and tourism is included here also, education, training, and institutional capacity development, typical topics of cross-border cooperation. If you first compare the organizational patterns, we can see that in case of these 3 countries, Slovenia seems to be the one which is the most reliant on public national organizations. This is coming from their public administration system, but also Slovenia is the most relevant from local government's point of view. This in the other two countries like Hungary and Croatia shows a much more balanced picture. If we compare the number of projects with the distribution of funding in these same categories, we can see a slight difference. Even if in Hungary the participation of the national bodies is not that particularly high in terms of funding, it is much more. It means that the Hungarian national bodies get a lot more finance from these cross-border cooperation programs, which are originally meant for the border area municipalities and actors, and not necessarily the state bodies, but still this is the case. In case of Slovenia, this is also a situation that the national bodies have a relatively large proportion of funding, just like the local government. In case of Croatia, we can see a relatively balanced picture where the national, the regional, and the local bodies are more or less equally represented in funding. If we compare along the settlement hierarchy, so the largest cities and the smallest municipalities, we can see a relatively similar picture, but this is also, influenced by the settlement structure of the different countries. You can see also the role of Slovenia's big cities in funding, very similar to the previous slide. But here, in this regard, the Croatian city of Osijek is much more concentrating than in general on the previous slide, the state institutions. But this is the most important, I think. If we check out the 5 levels of the settlement hierarchy, in the highest category, so in the biggest cities, the state bodies are clearly dominating. This is particularly true for Slovenia in terms of projects, particularly in terms of funding. So in the big cities, more or less, the state is the only important player. In Croatia, the situation is a bit more balanced, but you can see that also in the largest cities, the state is the heaviest funded. In Hungary, the situation is similar. If we go a bit lower to the next level of the centers of the counties of the NAS3 regions, we can see a much more balanced picture where the regional organizations are more important. You can see here that in funding, the Croatian regional organizations really stand out. It means that they are the best funded bodies on this level, while in case of Slovenia, for example, the smaller the local governments are getting relatively more funding. And this is, I think, the most important from the local government's point of view. In case of the towns with up to 5,000 inhabitants, this is the settlement level number 3. When in all countries, the local governments are the players who are getting the funding. And in case of the smallest municipalities, this is typically the same case, that the local governments are the most funded. So as a conclusion, we can say that the organizational patterns are defined by the single country's governance structures, as it is logical, but also the program's particularities have to be taken into consideration. This analysis shows, of course, that Slovenia stands out as the most state-oriented one, and Croatia is the most decentralized, particularly due to their very strong county structure. But also, besides the state-dominant, Slovenia stands out in terms of active local governments, and also they're concentrating most of the finances. The presence of the 2 national capitals, Zagreb and Ljubljana, in the program, this brings some kind of concentration, of course, which is not visible in Hungary, but still the Hungarian centralization is visible in this analysis. NAS 2 and 3 centers are dominated by state bodies. This is a general statement, true for all the countries, but Croatia is a bit of exception when they have a relatively strong country administration system. Very important is the role of the NGOs. I have not gone into details during the analysis, but they are usually operating in larger cities, and they are getting relatively less funding. The universities are those institutions which are trying to fill the gap of the lack of medium-tier governance bodies. This is particularly true for Hungary, and also the presence of private non-profit organizations is a very interesting issue, which is a typical type of body for Slovenia and also for Hungary. This is also filling a gap of lack of county administrations and decentralized bodies. We have compared these results with similar research from the previous period made by us and also by others. And we have found a bit more distinctive patterns in the previous period, 2007-2013 period. That time we made a similar analysis involving Austria concerning the Slovenia-Austria program, and it showed also that Austria, for example, is very much centralizing the NUTS 2 centers like Klagenfurt and Graz, the cooperation activities, just like the situation is in Hungary, while Slovenia and Croatia looked a bit more decentralized than Austria and Hungary. So it was it. I hope that it fitted in a way to the scope of this discussion. If you have any question, I will try to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zoltan. We have a couple of questions from the audience, but I will give the floor to Biljana first.
Yes, thank you, Adrian. I also saw the questions which seem very interesting. Just a few reflections and perhaps a broader question. In terms of what you've mentioned that because you have been following for a longer period the situation of the cross-border collaboration between these three countries and how it actually evolved from one collaboration that was meant to advance a little bit the even neighborly relationship to Europeanization of the region and to making the process more technocratic. I think that is one of the main takeaways for the EU accession countries. And we do have many cases across the region where the cross-border collaboration actually happens between member states and non-member states, candidate countries. But sometimes we do see disproportionate use and allocation of funds in these two, in EU members and non-members, which kind of brings to a certain frustration in the local, at the local level, not just for local governments, but also for civil society organizations, universities, and other users of the EU accession or the cross-border funding. And also one other takeaway is that it's very interesting that many of the funds have been used for climate change and tourism, actually, to advance tourism. I don't know how much you followed, but apparently there is a terminology now that the American administration is not supposed to use anymore, and climate change is among one of the terms. So I very much hope that the European Union, and of course all of us, will strongly remain committed to the climate change and the Paris Agreement. But I do see this also as a challenge in terms of understanding in local authorities and capacities of local administration and regional bodies as well across the region to understand the full implications, but also how to cope with the climate change. For many of them, it's just energy efficiency, not beyond that. And the last, which is probably linked to the question, you said that you didn't delve deeper on the NGOs and the civil sector, why they're lagging behind in terms of financing. And it's very interesting that you've also pointed out that many of them are, as we all know, centered around the big cities, but they still lag behind with funding. And I would like to link this to the current shrinking space, and can we, and Thomas, maybe you've also seen this in the new budget, how can we support NGOs with cross-border collaboration, but also with targeted civil society funding to advance their agenda and to actually keep the vibrant civil society? I mean, I know that this is a bit of a question beyond the presentation, but it really deserves a lot of attention in terms of bringing the whole of society in regional development, not just regional development agencies or local governments or national bodies, which are, according to your presentation, consuming a lot of the funds. Thank you.
May I intervene now?
Yes, please, Dr.
Thank you very much. I think it was very, very good question, both. Actually, I think, yes, it has become more technocratic. I think in these particular cases, we must also add this, that these cooperations were very symmetrical in the terms that that funding was joint and the whole funding mechanism was jointly managed. It means that there was one pot in case of these three programs, and the projects were equally financed. So there was no competition between the countries for funding. There was only a slight difference, not significant, a few percent. But I remember also those times in the early 2000s, also in Hungary, when these programs were asymmetrically funded. So it was harder, for example, for Croatian beneficiaries to get funding than for Slovenian or Hungarian ones. This is, of course, results some frustration, but I think this is something which is also a good exercise to start with these projects, because not only the tangible output of a project is important, but also the mechanism and the skills that can be gained through cooperation. And this is, yes, indeed, one of the most important elements of Europeanization. In my understanding, this way, technocratic approach is a positive thing, because then we get rid of this typical geopolitical approach, and we can focus much more on the topics. Concerning the climate change and tourism, it must be mentioned that in the 2014-20 period, this was put into the same priority. So tourism was one of the subtopics of the green priority in general, where climate change was one of them. And this makes this picture a bit confusing. But usually, in such projects, tourism is the one which which takes away the most of the money, because usually in tourism projects are heavy or semi-heavy, so they are having also some investment. And also climate change projects very often are having investments. In my opinion, climate change projects and nature protection and water management and everything else which is connected somehow to climate change are the best projects of cross-border cooperation, because usually these projects are happening in the direct border areas, particularly in Central Eastern Europe, where the direct border areas are usually not very populated. So they are very often located in protected areas along rivers, etc. And they are providing something very tangible directly at the border, which is otherwise not financed from mainstream funding, from national funding. These are usually done in neglected parts of the countries. And I think this is something which is a real added value of cross-border cooperation. This is something that if we want to advocate for cross-border cooperation and for cooperation in general from EU funding, this is something that must be, I think, stressed out. Concerning the NGOs, I have not gone into details. Of course, we made also analysis some years ago about this, a bit deeper, highlighting their role. Yes, they are operating much more in the larger cities. That's true, but also in some in the 2007-13 period, there was also in Hungary, for example, some NGOs were very active in the smallest municipalities. So NGOs, and also I mentioned this special type of organization, the private non-profit companies, which is like LTDs and non-profit LTDs, are filling the gap of the lacking regional governance bodies. This is very important in case of Slovenia, and and Hungary. But if we compare these three countries, Hungary is relatively weak in terms of civil society compared to Slovenia and Croatia. But still, as Croatia, for example, having proper institutions on regional level, they have a less active NGO sector in cross-border cooperation. But still, I think they are on the same level as Hungary. So I think their role is very important, but we must be aware that their funding, their absorption capacity in terms of funding is very limited. So even if they are relatively active in number of projects, they are poorly financed. So usually their project sizes are among the smallest. They don't implement the investments. They are rather promoting, organizing events, doing the outreach activities and so on.
Thomas, would you like to reflect on the NGO question as well?
Yeah, I mean, for the NGOs, I fully admit, yes, that's the point. I mean, I guess that these, when we talk about security, migration, and whatever, which will be new aspects. When we also focus, I hope it's serious, that is, or focus on rule of law approach, that there is an even stronger position for NGOs and for civil society organizations. So I don't see now in the proposal which I presented anything which would reduce the current impact or possibility for the NGOs. But honestly, it's really more the question: can NGOs or civil society organizations also afford it in future? Because I mean, in the EU, it's then mostly co-financing, so you have to contribute a little bit and so on, and this will not change. And it's more than the issue of how bureaucratic are the finances provided to the organizations.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Zoltan, we have a couple of questions from the audience. One is about the partnerships which proved to be more successful beyond local governments partnering or cooperating among themselves. So which partnerships? And maybe you can highlight something related to local government academia cooperation, if there are any examples. And the other question is, what incentives do national governments introduce for local governments so they are motivated to participate in cross-border cooperation projects?
Okay. Good questions, all of them. Concerning the success of the projects, this was not assessed in this analysis, that how the projects were successful. But if we look at the ratio of the activities, the number of projects and the funding, and we see that where the investments took place and where the tangible outputs are located, they are usually located in the small size towns. And in the larger municipalities, so those are those places where the where the cross-border cooperation can bring the biggest added value, in our opinion. While in the larger cities, the project sizes are a bit smaller, usually because administrative bodies are usually spending on stuff and on events, and not on physical investment. And usually in these smaller towns, these take into consideration the limited budget of these smaller towns. And I have mentioned that how much funding is constantly cut in Hungary, for example, on local level. These cross-border cooperation projects are having a bigger and bigger added value because they are financing investments which would not be possible to finance from other sources. So local governments of larger municipalities and small towns are the most important, I think. The next question is the incentives of the national governments. In these schemes, the national co-financing is something which indicates how the national governments approach to cross-border cooperation. In case of Slovenia and Croatia, there's no national co-financing to these projects. It doesn't mean that the national government doesn't take it important, but there the local governments are usually having sufficient funding for preparation of a project and co-financing the project. In case of Hungary, this is usually not possible. So in case of Hungary, the government besides the 85% of EU co-financing provides 10% of national co-financing, and also some kind of pre-financing in particular cases as well. And still the 5% co-financing and the pre-financing of a project for a Hungarian local government is a huge problem. Still, I think this national co-financing scheme in case of Hungary is a very good tool and relatively flexibly implemented. It still doesn't solve the local government's general financing problems. And how to motivate the cross-border cooperation? I think, yeah, this second part of the sentence is belonging to the previous one. So yeah, that's it. That was the answer. Yeah, academia, sorry. I have not checked it. Yes, academia. I think in cross-border cooperation, usually academic organizations cooperate with academic organizations. So it's relatively rare that local governments cooperate with research institutions. Very often it happens that in public schooling there's cooperation between local governments and public schooling institutions. It depends on the system of the different countries, how they maintain, for example, the schooling infrastructure. In Hungary, for example, schools are maintained by a state administrative body. It is a centralized body, not by the local governments, but in Slovenia and Croatia, they are maintained by local governments or county governments. This is a very, very different system. So it makes cooperation very difficult with Hungarian school institutions. In case of universities and research institutions, the situation is easier, but usually they are cooperating only among each other. So they are developing joint curricula, they are developing their equipment, launching different programs, schemes for exchange and so on, and not really cooperating with local governments. There are some examples of pilot interventions, but this is not the general picture.
Okay, thank you very much, Zoltan, for the good presentation and also for the discussion. So we will move on to Agron Hajimali on territorial administrative reform and the impact on organizational management capacity in Albania.
Good afternoon again. It is a real pleasure for me to be together with you, to listen you, to discuss with you, to learn from you, and to present something about my thought regarding territorial and administrative reform in Albania in the context of the theme for discussion, which is related to organizational and management capacity toward the approach of the EU. Thank you for organizer as the first. Next, please. Albania has undergone a significant territorial and administrative reforms to enhance municipalities and to ensure regional development. These reforms aim to strengthening local government, municipalities, and but more municipalities toward the efficiency and facilitated regional integration with the EU policies. Shortly, I will introduce the outline for you the impact of this territorial reform on organizational and management capacity, and as well on their role in the EU accession. Next, please. I'll give you some key aspects. Before 10 years, exactly in 2014, we, Albanian government, realized the territorial and administrative reform, reducing the number of local government units, communes, and municipalities from 373 to 61. In that time, we have listened a lot of debate between between parties, between all stakeholders, because we know very well such reforms are really very debatable one, because inside and behind are the interests of the citizen, but from other side, behind are the political interests. Anyway, these reforms consolidated, has a mission to consolidate and improve efficiencies and service delivery to municipalities. Before, we have small communes which be so close to the citizens and respect the principle of the democracy, but not the economy of scale. In this context, the government decided to do such a reorganization. But again, such key aspects include in that reform the level of decentralization, the level of financial autonomy, the improvement local government structure, which before was not so good. Next, please. I mentioned before that before 10 years, of course, and today we have a lot of debate regarding the effectivity and the efficiency of the reform. Is this reform fulfill the objective and the mission? Need to review and to recorrect and something like that. But everywhere there are different models of territorial and administrative reform, which are more related with it. The tendency to be centralized or to be decentralized, to be regional, to have a principle of regionalization, or to merge the municipalities, or to let the municipalities to decide for themselves based of Article number 5 of European Charter for Local Government among referendum. How should they should decide themselves if they wanted to be merged or to be unified with one of other municipalities. Anyway, of course, the key drivers for reforms have been and are again today, not only in Albania, but also in different countries, including candidate countries and EU countries. The key drivers for reforms remain economic efficiency, governance improvement, service delivery enhancement, and so on. But of course, we like all of them, but we should keep in consideration the level of the democracy. Of course, during that time, we followed different models of territorial and administrative reform from EU country, for example, from Sweden. We listen and learn from Nordic countries, Central Europe, but something looks interesting from other model of Croatia. But unlikely, we do not follow the Croatian model where they have cities and municipalities and cities, in total 550 municipalities, including local units in the rural area. Anyway, the dilemma is and will be in such a reform, and of course is today a dilemma again in Albania. Such territorial and administrative reforms stand for economy of scale or for versus versus democracy. In my opinion, I try to be positive, but I'm skeptic to say that we have fulfilled the economy of scale now with 61 municipalities. But I'm convinced that we have damaged a little bit democracy almost in the rural area. Next, please, Marina. Okay, we did it. We started implementing, supporting from government, civil society, almost different programs and projects from EU. And what's happened? We try, the reforms aim to create a very good structure or organizational and management capacities for 61 municipalities, but which is the impact? Do you get the impact? Do you have the impact? Of course, reforms led to increase the responsibility at municipality level, requiring better institutional capacities. Albanian local self-government indeed is very good, and he provided, it looks like very decentralized and give a lot of autonomy to municipalities. Actually, according to the law, all the municipalities has almost 42 function rules and responsibilities for which they to fulfill or to cover all of this. They need to be very well structured inside of municipalities. But it's not, we have had some progress in that aspect, but which is another impact is related to the financial management. I think we have got a progress, but a very limited one, because I cannot say that increasing the expenditure for municipalities now compared to 10 years or 20 years before is a significant indicator. No, that is not a significant indicator. It's a politician one, but not a real one which touches the interest of the community. Because when the reform started, the objective is to reduce the expenditure. For example, to reduce the cost of staff, because in that time we know, and the government say 373 municipalities have a huge number of employees, and they pay much more for administrative costs than for investment. In that time, before 10 years, we have almost 21,000 employees. And now, after 10 years with 61 municipalities, of course, the expenditure are increased, but we have almost 38,000 staff of municipality. 6,000 are with the civil servant staff. It doesn't matter that. That means that why I'm skeptic for that, because our intention, our aims of the reform is to reduce the cost, but the costs are increased. Anyway, after that, the staff of municipality, which year by year is increased, need to be trained to increase the capacity in this aspect. We have got a lot of progress, because Association of Local Authority Donors programs have investment in capacity building, included elected and non-elected staff, because to fulfill 42 function need new vision, new mentality, new capacity, new know-how. Because the territory is expanded, the roles and responsibilities are broader, and in this context, investment in capacity building is and remain appropriate issues for Albanian municipality. Another impact in this organizational and territorial reform remained the political and administrative barriers. Of course, I mentioned here a red type. We do not have exactly a red type, but of course, we have again a lot of problems regarding communication, administrative bureaucracy and procedure, or mostly the people in a remote area. They have a lot of complaints because the municipality is very far away from them. Some administrative units do not perform very well. They pass complaints or a paper or something they want in the administrative units. From administrative units, the complaints or paper or folder will go in the municipality, the center will come back. That means that there are some bureaucracy again, but here I couldn't let to without mention the e-government, for which we have had a kind of progress in national aspect, but in local aspect we are not in a very strong position. Next, please. To be totally fair with you, I'll mention positive impact and challenges in this aspect. Of course, institutional structure are more strengthened. Of course, we find more professional local administrator or staff, but of course, municipalities complain a lot. Mostly the municipalities in remote mountain and the rural area, they have a challenge is lack of human resources. Of course, we have improved the public services and the resource management, but from other side, I'm a bit skeptic saying that when we started the reform, such services like water service is transferred to municipalities. But after 7 or 6 or 8 years, after this year, again, the government interfere, change the law, do a reform in the water service and utilities, and reorganized such utilities in 12 regional utilities, where the municipalities have not more control regarding administrative management, only 49%. Those are such dilemmas, some steps before, some steps back, some steps left on right. Those in total goes to the challenges and risk, because of course we create such municipalities, but in remote areas, municipalities are out of the attention. No more services. The government is far away. The citizens are not so engaged. Remains a problem. Financial issues. Of course, here we can discuss which will be the level of financial decentralization. But the situation in Albania is improved. But again, in national level, again, local government units are financed by central government compared to their revenues. Okay, again, the dilemma remains and is very tangible, very visible, very discussable regarding providing almost equal services distribution between rural and urban area. And that is normal, because in urban area is more attraction than rural area. Next, please. But the government in that time interfered to create regarding regional and development approach, regarding the capacity, the government and all institutions, of course, in fulfillment the objective, but from other sides, under the pressure of local government association, other stakeholders and municipality. They push the government to interfere to produce good law regarding regional policies, to create an instrument for strengthening regional cooperation, fostering economic growth and cross-border initiatives. In this context, I'm so glad to say that such municipality like Shkodra, Leja, Permeti, Girocastra, Berati are performing very well in the cross-border cooperation, but the rest remain problematic one. And the last one is infrastructure. Of course, is investment to create infrastructure, economic zone, and public services enhancement. And that here I wanted to mention that so-called urban development in all the cities create a nice vision or nice attraction for the city, but they do not provide any economic development. Next, please. Regarding the impact on regional development and the cohesion, it's important to have more strategic planning and infrastructure investment. But in this aspect, I wanted to mention that during that time, almost 52, 53 municipalities out of 61 have prepared the urban strategic planning, for which they have as an instrument to develop their municipalities, and that is very good approach. Greater process to funding EU and national programs. Yes, of course, there are several programs here in Albania from EU, from SDC and others, which have supported basically local government, elected and non-elected, and supporting technical assistance in different public services like sewage, sewerage and others, which really have made a lot of difference. Without such support, the impact and changing the face of local government after territorial and administrative reform depend on this organization will have very question. Which is the risk? Is there any risk about smaller communities? Of course there is and will remain, but that is another opportunity to see how should we solve this problem. Maybe increasing the role of municipalities and pushing the city council to invest more in the rural area, to be more transparent, to engage the local communities, or we'll find different administrative issues to be so close to such smaller municipalities and faraway communities. Next, please. Challenges and lessons learned. Yes, why the reform has improved the governance in the municipality mostly. Challenges persisted too. Lack of financial and human resource at local level. And for that aspect, I say no one municipalities in all world is fulfilled with the money. But I say, being they have 42 roles, responsibilities, and function, they need to get more money, not only just 1% of the GDPs. I think to put a standard, an optimal standard for delivering public services, 61 municipalities in Albania, according to my thoughts and calculation, need to have at least 2% of the GDPs. But that is in the hand of the government, and that is the level of our economic development. Coordination between central and local government is very important. Be totally transparent and bias in cooperation is really important. A need for greater citizen engagement in decision making. I mentioned that because the fact that the distance from small communities and the center of municipality is increased. Municipalities need to find a solution to bring the citizens closer to their decision-making process. Lesson learned from EU members and not EU members candidate country, of course, can help to address those challenges. Is exactly this kind of online meeting we are following here, which we can learn from each other and sharing experience, starting from Croatia, from Austria, from Slovenia, and different countries. Next, please. Opportunities to the EU. Now, Albanian citizens have decided ultimately that we want to go to the EU. We belong to this family, but in this context, we will to change culture, mentality. We will to work much more to be prepared for being member of EU. But in terms of institutional capacity, well-functioning regional government system is crucial for EU membership. Of course, in Albania, we have 12 regions which do not have such roles and responsibilities, but several self-municipalities are free to create intermunicipal cooperation to create such microeconomy zone or territorial zone for which they can work together and can demonstrate that they are fulfilling some rules and standards for EU. The next one, please. Some conclusion and recommendation. I mentioned that Albania's reform is a step forward in the strengthening governance and regional development. However, continuously institutional capacity building is needed. Without such investment in the capacity building, municipalities and local level will remain problematic in providing administrative service and public service. Mostly now in this global development in all aspects, we need to have a new vision, new capacity, new know-how, and human resource which really are very oriented to work locally and think globally, which are such recommendation policies which I think need to be implemented. The first one is strengthening financial and administrative autonomy in municipality. My colleagues presented such facts regarding royalty tax and other tax. I am a critic for municipality. For example, when we talk for royalty tax, why we collect only 30% of such valuable fees? Because the building, the house, the apartment, they are here, they do not move. I mentioned that because municipalities have to create such a good structure and capacity to collect such money which are missed in their budget. The other one is enhancing intermunicipal cooperation. Of course, our law of functioning self-local government allow intermunicipal cooperation. But today we have very small or very light in such cooperation. All of us need to push there, because going to inter-municipal cooperation, we have created the scale of the economy. And the last one is related to the promote the transparency and citizen participation in governance, because without including the voice of citizens, the municipalities will never be healthy during their activity. And the last one, the successful of each reform, organizational capacity, elected or non-elected, without reform, with the reform need to have a vision, a leadership with the integration, which convince the citizen that we are in the right way toward the EU integration. The next one is the question that I know very well what means to be last speakers. I know very well the level of passion. So I'm here if you have any question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Agron, for this presentation and for actually raising an important issue, this of the link between the territorial administrative structure and reform, the capacity of local governments and their ability to participate in EU regional development projects. Bibiana, do you want to comment?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Agron, for the presentation. I've actually had the opportunity to be on a mission in Albania recently and visited some of the smallest municipalities in the country. I went to Merdita, Aleja, and to many others as part of a digitalization mission to assess capacities. And yeah, I must admit that there is a strong willingness of municipal administration to advance local service provision, but this does not correlate with the funding available, and also with so many of the systems centralized and waiting for the central institutions to actually take action whenever a problem evolves. So even though the level of decentralization has increased, there are still many dependencies in terms of service provision by the central authorities. But going back to your recommendations, perhaps something to highlight, and I see there are questions in the comments, and there is an active debate in the comments from participants. As part of the capacities needed and the building of capacities, perhaps you can reflect on the plans of the Albanian government and the Albanian Agency for Support of Local Government of establishing a local governance academy. And will this perhaps increase the capacities of municipalities to prepare projects for EU funds, for regional development, and for many others? How do you see it? Is it an honest attempt to increase capacities? Thank you. We cannot hear you. You're muted.
Your
Agron.
microphone.
Thank you for Albanian colleagues which do such a question. I'll be totally open and fair with you. I mentioned we have done a lot of progress, but creating such academy for local government, for such small countries we are, creating such academy for local government, for 61 municipalities, creating such academy, which never is ensured that financial sustainability, create such academy, when we have ASPA, National Agency for Training Public Service Servants, I do not find reasonable. Why? I do not see for my countries, for integration, to have two categories of training, public to train staff of local administration and staff for central administration. Our intention is to integrate each other, to be in the same place, to have the same curricula, to have a standard of providing such curricula, and not to create such division, to say you are training for municipalities and you are training for central government. In this context, I personally do not like and prefer the academy, but from other side, I try to be totally open with you. It's not something that comes from bottom-up approach. It's something that is imposed for an initiative for different person or different project. But we should build up the system in Albania for ourselves, from ourselves, and not from the interest of any program or any persons. That is my question regarding the academy. But regarding the agency, I'm positive. Recently, the agency for supporting local government is almost during these 2 years is performing very well. Is coordinating very well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. There is a question related to economy of scale and the link to the 7 new functions which were devolved to the reformed local governments. Do you advise the combination of territorial administrative reform with further decentralization? You have to unlock your microphone.
Thank you for question. Yes, I am a person that have 30 years working for decentralization for local government, and I am very lobbyist and advocate for decentralization at municipality. But talking for the current situation, I've suggest recently to the government that of course we need decentralization, but we need to go to the to have a diversity of decentralization, asymmetric decentralization or full decentralized system. I mentioned that for several facts. For example, we have Tirana, Shkodra, Durrës, 10 or 12 municipalities, which we consider big municipalities, which really they perform very well. They fulfill 42 functional roles and responsibilities. That is true. But I cannot say that for propaganda, that the municipalities which Biljana visited, Mirdita or other municipalities, are in such position or are able to fulfill 42 functional roles and responsibilities. In this context, I say, yes, of course, we should give for this municipality, among the law, we should change the law, such roles and responsibilities, which this structure, this organizational structure of municipality, taking consideration local economic development, human resource, culture, heritage, can fulfill for citizens to provide optimal services. For Tirana, of course, Tirana is able to provide education, protection, environment, and so on. But for such small municipality, I cannot talk for climate protection, for rural security, and for policemen and such things like that. In this context, it is not a stupid. It is not to be afraid, ashamed. Why should we can create this kind of asymmetric decentralization? Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I would like to ask Thomas and Zoltan if they have any thoughts about the link between territorial fragmentation and the possibility of local governments to participate in EU regional development funded programs. It's an important question for countries like Ukraine or Moldova, who have both engaged with different speeds in territorial administrative reform. It's somehow taking the lead of Albania somehow. So Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, the point is, the smaller the entities, the how to say, the harder it is to get to the European funding. So that is that's the main problem. But as we see also in Albania, it doesn't automatically get better when you have the amalgamation and how to say, bigger entities with also not the capacity or not the full needed capacity. The full needed capacity for it. I mean, what I see is, of course, there are, I mean, supported programs for, how to say, amalgamation and cooperation and intermunicipal cooperation. So honestly, I would focus here on IMCs and intermunicipal cooperations in order to, I mean, for the, provide better services or develop services, develop more capacity and competence, and also then getting up to the how to say, to the regional fundings and to the EU fundings.
Thank you, Thomas. Zoltan?
I generally agree with Thomas. I would be also in favor of larger municipalities in terms of EU funding and project generation. I think the reason is also very technocratic. I have read the comments in the during this previous presentation that there is a negative correlation between the size of the municipality and the democracy. That may be true, but we should be aware that development of projects, generation of projects, implementation of projects is not just only a material issue. So financing is necessary, which is available, of course, more available in case of larger municipalities, but also human capacities. And this is something that I would like to emphasize because if we would like to focus on topics like green transition, energy efficiency, climate change. So these are very sophisticated topics which require very, skilled people in the staff of these local governments. And if they want to generate projects in these domains, they would need the capacity. And in case of smaller municipalities, these capacities are surely not available. And for example, we are in Hungary very much suffering from the lack of proper technical personnel, not only in case of the smallest municipalities, but also in towns of 10 to 20,000 inhabitants. And this problem is getting more severe. So if there is not enough capacity on level of municipalities, that it should be provided in another way. Then if we don't have the capacities of the municipalities, then the state or regional government or someone has to provide this capacity. Then we will come to the situation that also if the staff capacity is provided by, for example, by the state, then also the funding which is related to this capacity is also controlled by the state. So we are getting to a decreased financial autonomy of these local governments. I think this is a dilemma that has several aspects, and I would say we need to find the optimum in terms of size and capacity where complex projects can be managed.
Thank you very much, Zoltan. And Gabor, yes.
I just have a question related to this capacity issue. Maybe it's a question to Thomas, who is more insider than us. that, there is a constant debate and argument that large cities should have access directly to EU funds. And I think it's more like a wishful thinking of the opposition mayors who want to bypass the national government, national plans and programs. So is there any discussion about this in the new multi-annual framework? I mean, you mentioned that countries or national governments are members of the of the EU, so they should be in the driving seat. But is there any chance to do this type of a little bit more decentralized approach? Which, I mean, these cities have capacity. It's not a question of capacity. They have representation in Brussels, they have staff, and so on.
I mean, look, you say it's wishful thinking, and unfortunately, that's what it is. I mean, I know that there are lobbying and advocacy approaches of, let's say, representatives of local governments and the associations going into this direction, like Eurocities and CMR and so on. And honestly, I would also support this because I think it makes sense. And meanwhile, when we also talk about multi-level governance, it should be opened like that. But having in mind the situation and that it's still these national governments, because in the end it would be also, how to say, it would need the support of in the council of the governments to go into this direction. I don't think this will happen. Maybe in some countries, depending then really on the national level, this performance-oriented approach. I mean, this is what I was when I studied discussions with other representatives or experts and whatever, said, okay, cannot be the performance approach and a door opener for cities or even regions or whatever to get direct fundings or more direct fundings. And the answer is theoretically yes, but in fact it will be it's a long way into this direction. So let's say this can be, an optimistic view, a driver for the future, for the long future. I don't think already in this multi-annual framework, but it's unfortunately not the case now. So yes, it should be, but I don't think that this will be the case.
Thank you very much, Thomas. I think time has flown, and we've been together for about 2 hours. So I'm preparing to close the workshop, but before that, I want to thank each and every one of you presenters for the effort and for the time, and also to Biljana for the comments. And also would like to highlight that we had with us Jamie Bucks, who is Executive Director of LPSA, and Chas Cadwell, who is on the board of LPSA, and also Glenn Wright, who is co-chair of the European Central Asia Working Group, together with Gabor and myself. And Marina as well for helping putting the whole event together. So thank you again. Thank you everyone for participating and listening and contributing. And I hope to see you to our next meeting, which will be on June 11, 2025. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye. Bye.